मध्य प्रदेश के प्रमुख राजवंशों के इस ऐतिहासिक विश्लेषण में आपका स्वागत है। Welcome everyone to this explainer breaking down the major dynasties of Madhya Pradesh. If you're an aspirant gearing up for the MPPSC mains, you know exactly how incredibly dense medieval regional history can be, right? There are so many names, dates, temples and texts that can just easily blur together. But today, we're going to break all of that down. We're going to make it highly visual, highly structured, and most importantly, we're going to make it stick in your memory. We're taking a fact file approach that gets straight to the point.
So, here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We're going to kick things off with the sources of ancient history, dive into the Paramaras and Bojshala, then shift gears to the Tamar dynasty's golden era of music, and finally wrap up with Kachapagata art and architecture. Let's get right into it.
All right, Part 1, Sources of Ancient History, Unearthing the Past.
You know, before we can even begin to appreciate these massive regional empires, we really have to look at the two main pillars of historical evidence. On one hand, we've got archaeological evidence. This is your physical, literally set-in-stone proof. Things like rock inscriptions, ancient coins, and the structural remains of temples. And on the flip side, we have literary sources. These are the written works, often crafted by court poets, covering plays, chronicles, and grand texts. To get a complete, accurate picture of what actually happened, historians have to carefully weave both of these threads together. It's like a giant puzzle.
Now this right here, this is absolute high-yield stuff for your exam. For example, look at the Gwalior Prashasti. This is an inscription by Raja Bhoj that serves as our absolute key source for the Paramara lineage. Then we've got the Adivaraha coins issued by Miher Bhoj, which wonderfully showcase his deep religious devotion. Moving over to literary sources, you absolutely must remember Rajshekhar. He was the court poet of Mahendrapal I, and he wrote the Karpura Manjari as well as the Kavya Mimamsa. Oh, and of course, Kalhan's incredibly famous text, the Raja Tarangini. Seriously, I urge you to commit these exact pairings to memory right now. They are extremely frequent targets in the mains, for sure.
Moving on to Part 2, Bojshala and the Paramara dynasty, the pinnacle of learning.
Okay, so Bojshala was not just some beautiful building. It was essentially the premier university of its entire era. It was built by the great Paramara ruler, Raja Bhoj, and it functioned as the supreme center for the intensive study of Sanskrit, grammar, literature, and philosophy. But it wasn't just academic, it was a deeply spiritual place, housing the temple of goddess Saraswati, also known as Vagdevi, where knowledge itself was literally worshipped. Today, its pillars and artistic remains stand as a protected masterpiece of Paramara architecture by the ASI. It's the ultimate symbol of their golden age of learning.
Now let me throw a quick question at you just to clear the mental palate. Who developed the legendary Dhrupad singing style in Gwalior? Think about it for a second. परमार वंश की शैक्षिक प्रगति के बाद अब हम तोमर वंश के संगीतमय युग की ओर बढ़ते हैं.
And that brings us to Part 3, the Tamar dynasty, the golden era of music.
So from the 14th to the 16th centuries, the Tomars of Gwalior took central Indian culture to heights that had never been seen before. To answer our previous question, we really have to look at one truly monumental figure, Raja Man Singh Tomar. He fundamentally shaped the future of music through something called the Man Kautuhal. What is that? Well, it's a foundational musical treatise composed by Raja Man Singh himself. Through this specific text, he actually documented and codified the highly refined Dhrupad classical singing style, completely securing its place in classical Indian history forever. It was a real game changer.
Because it was heavily promoted in the royal court, this Dhrupad style flourished into a tangible, lasting legacy. But they didn't just support music, they innovated. Working alongside Rani Mrignayani, Raja Man Singh is credited with inventing entirely new ragas. We're talking about Gujarati Todi, Gujarati Malhar, and Mongol Gujarati. They even went so far as to establish a famous music school right there at the Gujarat Mahal. And hey, drop this massive fact into your exam answers to really stand out. Legendary musical titans like Tansen and Baiju Bowra, yeah, they actually received their musical education right there at that very school. It was, without a doubt, the absolute epicenter of Indian classical music.
Next up is Part 4, Kachapagata art and architecture. Now, if the Tomars were the masters of sound, the Kachapagathas were the absolute masters of visual and structural stone architecture. To really understand this empire, we kind of have to walk geographically through their territory. The dynasty was actually divided into 3 distinct branches. Step 1 is the Gwalior branch, running from roughly 950 to 1125 AD. This was founded by Lakshman, but famously expanded by Vajradaman, who actually defeated the Pratiharas to establish an independent state.
Step 2 is the Dubkund branch, founded by Yuvraj I. And finally, Step 3 is the Narwar branch, prominently ruled by Veer Singh, who was powerful enough to adopt the grand title of Maharaja Dhiraj. Knowing these distinct branches and who founded them shows a really high level of historical understanding to your examiners.
And let me tell you, their architectural supremacy is just phenomenal. The Kachapagatas spearheaded a true golden era of Nagara-style temple construction. They built the exquisitely detailed Sasbahu or Sahasrabahu temple in Gwalior. Then, over in the Morena district at Sihonia, they constructed the incredibly massive Kakamath Shiva temple. And in the Ashoknagar district, they developed the intricate group of temples at Katwaha. For your mains, you need to make sure you connect these specific historic temples to their exact modern-day districts. That level of precision is exactly how you're going to score top marks.
But, their legacy wasn't solely carved out of stone. They had a profoundly broader social impact as well. Under Kachapagatha rule, we saw immense economic prosperity, largely due to their protection of ancient southern trade routes. Furthermore, they heavily supported Hindu sects, specifically the Shaiva and Vaishnava traditions. Culturally, it was under their era that the widespread popularity of the Dolamaru romantic folktales really took root. This provided a distinct cultural and social identity to medieval India, so they built a society that was just as robust as their temples.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive, and to this final big-picture question. Knowing this foundation, how do the cultural and architectural achievements of these specific regional dynasties reflect in the modern cultural identity of Madhya Pradesh? Think about it. From the scholarly pursuits of Boshala to the ragas of Gwalior and the towering temples of Morena, medieval history isn't just stuck in the past. It's the very bedrock of the state's modern identity. Keep this analytical framework in mind when you're structuring your essays. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.